What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about OnyxCoin today, XCN USD. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and let's get into it, my friends. It is the 16th day of October, and I feel compelled, like I did yesterday, to really advocate for the staking on OnyxCoin. I mean, they ramped up the APR to 33%, you guys. That's phenomenal, right? There were times, like all throughout this time here, throughout this pump, they had 30% APR. So if anybody's wondering that this or worried that this might hurt the chance for us to pump, no. We literally had a higher, the majority of the time that we've been consolidating, we had a lower APR than when we actually pumped. Okay, so it doesn't work necessarily like that. We're going to go over some thoughts on that actually. I was talking to one of my buddies. Shout out to Colby if you're watching this. Talking to him about this, he made some good points too. About why staking might be beneficial, and there's goods, there's bads. We're gonna go over it all, but I definitely believe that staking in itself is beneficial to anybody who is staking. If you want to stake, I highly, or if you've been thinking about it, I highly do advocate for it. I think that OnyxCoin is trustworthy. They make it easy to stake and unstake. Staking always, and before we get any further into that, staking always, no matter what protocol you're using, staking always adds more risk. It always does. It might be a small amount of risk, it might be a large amount of risk depending on the protocol, especially if you don't know anything about it, but staking always adds more risk. So if you're looking for the least risky way to invest, just buy your coins, hold them in cold storage or on the exchange, right? Less risk. But if you stake, there's always more risk. Now, that doesn't mean that it's incredibly riskier. Hold on. Doesn't mean that it's incredibly more risky. Sorry, I thought I heard my daughter crying. But it doesn't change the fact that there is some added inherent risk to that. Okay, now with that being said, if you go to Google, you type in OnyxCoin. Let's just say OnyxCoin here. You type in OnyxCoin on Google, okay? And you go to onyx.org. You'll come to this website. You click Launch App, and then it'll bring you to this page here. You can connect your wallet, and the wallets that I use typically are either MetaMask or Coinbase wallet. You can use a browser wallet, whatever wallet connect, whatever wallet you have, Trust Wallet, Onyx Wallet itself, that might be the preferred one, but you can use any of these wallets. You'll send your Onyx coin from an exchange to one of these wallets, then you'll send it from the wallet to the staking protocol, where you will get 33.1% APR. And every damn day you're going to build. It'll actually tell you what you earn daily too. And this new hub is kind of nice to see. Points APR, so you get Onyx points as well. And Onyx points, I believe, are used to redeem for extra Onyx coins as well. I'm not 100% sure. And you can look into that, right? But there's all kinds of. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it is. But it's definitely beneficial. I myself am enjoying the Onyx coins that I'm earning every single day. And with that, like imagine, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but imagine you're earning an extra 1,000 Onyx coins a day. I don't know how much everybody has for XCN, but imagine you're earning 1,000, or if you're holding a lot of Onyx coin, you might be earning more than that, maybe 10,000 or maybe thousands of Onyx coins a day, right? Maybe more than that even. That can really turn into a lot of money if XCN hits $1. Now I want to talk about the positives and the negatives with staking and how that impacts the price. Okay, so let's look at this real quick. Think about it this way, right? This is the positives. This is the positives that my buddy and I were talking about. He brought up a good point, because I was only bringing out the negative aspects, that it brings people who are just chasing staking APR. They're not loyal. All they're doing is they're going to stake their coins. Then once they get the rewards, they're going to cash out on them as it comes consistently. There are investors in the crypto space that are stake farmers. They will find a project that is safe, that is reliable, that actually does pay out people APR, and it's not something that they're going to lose their money on. They don't have to lock up their tokens for months at a time. They can just get in and get out whenever, just like OnyxCoin. And you can literally, man, I'm telling you, the average person would have no problem staking and then unstaking like that. You're going to be fine. It's not, I can't say that I've like staked with that I've unstaked millions of dollars, but I've definitely unstaked a large amount of money at one time, and it was flawless. It happened instantly. I've heard people tell me that they had to wait a couple days at the most. I think the longest time I've heard is like 3 days that they had to wait for their Onyx coin to get unstaked. But that was also during very high traffic hours, or very high traffic when we were literally at the top here. They said they had to wait for a few days. So just so you're aware, like anything in the crypto space, when there's high traffic, it's harder to move things around. Okay, does that make sense? That's just something that happens no matter what. No matter if you're in crypto or if you're online trying to buy tickets at a concert, whenever you have high traffic, things don't operate the way they're supposed to typically. Um, anyways, uh, there's some of the negatives, but the positives are that this will promote people obviously who are loyal, right? If you're staking, you're going to hold, you're going to continue to hold, right? You're staking so that you can get the APR. That's going to promote a lack of selling pressure, right? Lack of trading, lack of any of that. It's just people who are getting in and holding, and that's at a base level. That is a very positive thing, right? But the negative here is if you're using the staking protocol and you're making 1,000 OnyxCoin per day, or thousands of OnyxCoin per day, or tens of thousands of OnyxCoin per day. Whenever OnyxCoin is worth $1, $1, imagine you're staking. Imagine you have, let's say, 10 million OnyxCoins, or 1 million OnyxCoins, whoever you are, and we're all the way up at $1 now. You might not sell your XCN stack that you've acquired here, but maybe just on principal alone, you'll take profits on what you've earned for staking rewards. Maybe maybe you'll kind of, and that's a good risk-free way to take profits. You literally just take profits on money that you didn't even invest in, right? It's going to, as the price continues growing, it's going to generate selling pressure. That's all I'm trying to say, right? You're getting 1,000 OnyxCoins a day at $1. That means you're getting $1,000 a day in passive income. That's $30,000 a month. You know what I mean? And it's not hard. It's not a small amount of money, but it's not hard to get to the point where you're getting 1,000 OnyxCoins, let alone more than that a day, depending on how much capital you have. Even if you have 500,000 OnyxCoins, which is really not hard to achieve, you're still getting hundreds of OnyxCoins a day, which will be hundreds of dollars a day in passive income, thousands of dollars a month, right? And by the time we get up there, everybody's going to have some of that. So I'm just thinking that the negatives of this high APR is that when we do get to higher prices, all these loyal stakers, they're going to start to take profits. It's not going to hurt OnyxCoin to such a degree that we can't grow, but let's just say the maximum potential was $2.20. With the added selling pressure, I think that we're not going to hit that. You know what I mean? We're going to stop somewhere lower, probably above $1. That's my expectation. I still very much do believe that OnyxCoin will hit $1. Even if it doesn't, even if it only hits 50 cents, it hits half of that, that's still a 50x from here, guys. It's still phenomenal growth, right? The average altcoin is expected to do a 20x or more. If I'm wrong and OnyxCoin doesn't hit the areas that we're anticipating that it does hit by the end of the cycle, that's fine. It can hit 50 cents, it can hit 80 cents. Even if it stops at 20 cents, that's still about average what we'd expect the average altcoin to do. So that's still fantastic gains. And even from here, the staking rewards would still be worth a lot more than they are now. But I'm boring myself talking about this, so I'm going to move on. Okay, I did tell you guys that we would make sense out of OnyxCoin going to 26 to 32 cents today, so let's do that. XCN BTC here on KuCoin. I'm really glad that KuCoin has this. I'm going to talk to my daughter real quick because she's looking at me with her cute eyes. Hold. I'm almost done. We're not really almost done. We've actually got a lot to talk about, but we'll make it as quick as we can. XCN to BTC. We're going to explain the 26 to 32 cent price area. Okay, we're going to explain it to the best of my abilities at least. Looking at this here, obviously, so this is XCN versus BTC. This is XCN versus USD. Now they look very similar, but slightly different, right? There's some slight differences. If we take the all-time high of this chart, putting it at the low of this chart here, you can see that we ran up, had a nice move all the way up to our 0.5, and we pulled all the way back to the 236. Now, not financial advice, not a financializer. It's actually very common to go from the 0.5 to the 236 and then go up to the golden ratio. For a long time throughout this range, okay, we did not hit the 236. We were assuming that the next target area might be something higher. But at this point in time, I think it is more important, or not more important. It might be helpful to consider that we do go to the golden ratio, that we stop there. So we might have some new targets to talk about as far as where we go. And hint, hint, these will be lower targets technically, because for a long time we thought that we were going to go here. And the rationality behind that was massive move up, massive consolidation phase. I doubt that we stop right here, barely above our current high. I would think that we see a nice run up. And if we're not stopping here, where's the next area to stop? It'd be this area of support. We'll get into all that. We'll make sense out of all that. Inevitably, I do believe XCN versus BTC will hit this area again. But there's also reason to believe now, and especially with my knowledge in fibs, seeing this 0.5 to 236 reaction, even if it did happen with a scam wick, even if it did happen on a crazy day, it still happened. The golden ratio technically would be the next area to consider. And we do have a point of resistance here. So it is something to consider. Where before we were in this area, it wouldn't make sense really to stop there. Now we're so low. That move itself is a very large move. So it's something to consider. Let's go over that. What would happen, and let's actually put a line right there. What would happen if XCN to BTC went right here? I think it's perfect, smack dab in the middle of this range, and we stopped right there, okay? Where it once did not make sense before, now that we're low enough, this is actually a somewhat of a valid move. So let's run with that idea, okay? Let's see. Google calculator. Google calculator. And you'll see how this all works out, right? If you're not understanding what we're doing right now, just wait. It'll all make sense. So this number here is 0.0 with 6 zeros, okay? That's what the -6 is, and then 8189. So 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, 8189. Right? I want to make sure. Measure twice, cut once, right? There we go. That times, let's just say the current price of Bitcoin. What I can guarantee is that XCN is not going to move up here versus Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is just here still, or that Bitcoin's going lower. Likely, if XCN is growing versus Bitcoin, XCN is moving up. Likely, if XCN is moving up in the US dollar, then Bitcoin is also likely moving up. So what we can basically certify is that by the time XCN versus BTC is at this level, Bitcoin will not be at its current price of 111.3K, okay? $111.3 thousand. Multiply it by that, we get a number of 9 cents. Now, this is not a minimum target. 9 cents, just so we understand, by the way that we did this, is a target that makes no sense. So what do I mean by that? I mean that when we move up next, when we do break out of this zone here, and we see this is the US dollar pair, not the BTC pair, not to get confusing here. Whenever we do move up, and we're at 94% of a penny right now. So going all the way up to 9 cents is essentially a 10x from here, right? It's a 9.1 cent price. That'd essentially be just under a 10x from here. This doesn't make sense in the sense that it's too small, it's too low, it's not high enough. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because likely when XCN BTC gets here, Bitcoin itself will not be at these prices. Bitcoin will be at higher prices, and we factored it in. We multiplied it by Bitcoin's current price. So where might Bitcoin's price be? Okay, I always like to do it like that just to show what price doesn't make sense, okay? What's too small? If anybody's saying XCN will stop at 8 cents, it'll stop at 10 cents. Really, we just did the math. 9 cents doesn't make sense. I doubt 10 cents makes sense. We're probably looking at 15 cents or higher. Let's get to that, okay? So I know we're talking about 26 to 32 cents ultimately, and we're going to get there, and we're going to get beyond there. But again, because of where we are in this chart, it is important, I think, to consider these lower targets. And already we've established that this area kind of does not make sense at all. So this area, I think, will make sense as we go forward. Let's move forward, okay? Bitcoin is at 111K. Its next target area that I think we're going to see would be, I think inevitably we're moving up to 180K by the end of this year or higher, maybe even by the end of November, right? We really could see 180K by the end of November. But its next target area technically is 140K, and then 150, 160K, and then 180K. Okay, so let's do our math based off of all those numbers. If XCN versus BTC hits this level, and Bitcoin is at $140,000, the price for XCN would be 11.4 cents, which again, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it could make sense on this chart. 11.4 cents just above the 1414. Typically, that's where you stop, is just above the 1414. So, hey, we can make sense out of that, right? I think we can make sense out of that. 11.4 cents, okay? Now we can make sense out of that. And again, these are conservative targets. We're starting conservative, and then we're going to move up. We're going to up the ante a little bit, okay? The next target area to consider is 150 to 160. Let's just put it right in the middle there at 155, okay? $155,000 right there. And that put us at about a 12.7 cent price, XCN USD. See, to me, this price makes a little bit less sense. It would make more sense to stop a little bit below, because now you're in between the 1618 and the 1414. This price makes a little bit less sense to me, but it could happen. And then, of course, the $180,000 price. I would assume if Bitcoin, that's my ultimate topping point. I don't think that XCN versus BTC would stop at 180K. It probably, XCN versus BTC would probably stop here before Bitcoin reached 180K or after it reached 180K. So Bitcoin might not be exactly at 180K. It might be more like 170K, something like that, let's just say. And that's about a 14-cent price. And again, this price doesn't really make sense either, because it's right below the golden ratio. But we made sense out of something that is at least between 11.5 cents to about 14 cents. Okay, we made sense out of that. To me, it would make the most sense to either stop at that 11.5 cent zone or actually just continue up to about 15.7 cents. Now, let's assume Bitcoin's at higher prices. Maybe, perhaps Bitcoin is at 200,000 or higher by the end of the year. Maybe we're at 200. The highest that I'd give us by the end of the year is 246 to 203,000. Okay, if we're up here in this area, let's assume that Bitcoin does in fact top off at 246, and then XCN versus BTC tops off after Bitcoin comes down. Typically, after Bitcoin tops off, that's when altcoins really start to rally, and maybe XCN tops off when Bitcoin's worth 200,000, 225. I like to be conservative, so let's stick on the low end of that. Let's say 200,000. What would this number be? 200,000 by the end of the year, because I really do think we can see 200,000 by the end of the year. That'd be about 16 cents, and again, that lines up a little bit more appropriately with our golden ratio zone. So we're coming up with a lot of levels that make sense, or we're coming up with a couple of levels that make sense, a couple that don't make sense. But again, this is all coming from the perspective of this more conservative estimate on the XCN BTC chart, which we didn't really consider that we'd stop here, right? The thought for a long time was, here we are stopping here, right, at the base of this range. We moved down this whole path. We just moved down, and the only place we stopped whenever we moved up here, where we stopped coincidentally, was at the only place that we stopped in this whole path down, right? Everything else, we just moved down week after week after week. We had a little stop here, but that doesn't count, right? We stopped here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then on the 6th week, we broke below. So this was a month that we stopped here. More significant than anything else all the way down, right? So it's no coincidence that we topped off right at the base of this range. The thought for most of this range was that whenever we move up, we're not just going to move up a little bit, we're going to move up a lot. So if we move up a lot, right, in continuation in respect to this move here, we're not going to stop here. Where's the next area that makes sense? Well, it's not going to be here. It's not going to be here. It's probably going to be at the base of this range, right? Just like we stopped at the last base, it might make sense that we stop here. Not only would it make sense to stop here based off of that, but from a high to a low, all-time high to low, that also lines up directly with our 786. It lines up directly with the 786. And typically, and again, this is the discussion before we hit the 236, okay? Typically, whenever you interact with the 0.5, before interacting with the golden ratio, these are the moments where you do actually pass through the golden ratio on the first attempt. Most of the time with the golden ratio, on the first attempt, you do stop here. But whenever you interact with the 0.5 beforehand, that gives you added chances that you do excel to the 786, 886 area. And we could talk about the 886 maybe, but I think the 786 makes the most sense to stop at, right? It's the base of this area. We stopped at the base of this area. However, now we've hit the 236, and I think that does hurt our chances of crossing through the golden ratio on the first attempt, where before we didn't have that, right? So the chances were higher that we cross above. That doesn't mean that we can't cross above. We can. I've seen it happen enough times. It can happen. But just understand here, now, from a low to a high, let's just see. Low to a high here. I mean, that would be the exact same move. That's actually kind of encouraging, isn't it? That would be the exact same move all the way up there. And if we moved in that same amount of time from the current price, from the current week, we actually could see this by the end of the year. Okay, so that's really nice to see, actually. In the same time format, we even have some weeks to spare. So weeks to spare. So that's nice. There's a lot of things. The measurement, the 786, the applied logic of where the price action stops, right, just using our eyes. There's a lot of sense to be made. And not only that, if we take this high here, and and we put it, well, see, for a long time we put it at this low. The 1886200 level was right there. It actually lined up perfectly with that. Now it'd be most appropriate, I think, to take this low, which, hey, look at that. The golden ratio is right there too. That's nice. There's a lot of congruence up there, even with our newfounded chartness that we haven't done in a long time. So perfect. This level here is at the 5 zeros, 1872. So let's input that. 5 zeros, 1872. This is the price versus Bitcoin. One Onyx coin perceived to be worth that much. So if XCN versus BTC does go all the way up to this level here, right? I'll delete it all. If XCN versus BTC does go up to this level here, we don't need all the other reasons, right? This is the reason why I think we're going here primarily, is because we didn't stop anywhere else. That's the next stopping point. But we had all those other reasons to kind of agree that there is congruence around this area. There's some significance around this area, no matter how you cut it. Whether it's by extensions, whether it's by retracements, whether it's by measure moves, whether it's by price significance, there is some significance at this area that we're drawn to. It might be where we stop by the end of this year. Let alone by the end of the cycle, we might go higher. This price times what we perceive Bitcoin to be by the end of the year. Let's just cut the crap. We're not going to do all this because now we're talking about end of year stuff. Let's do 180K and then a $200,000 price. Okay, let's just do both of those. Oops. This times, and maybe, let's say we stop at 180K by the end of the year. Again, the thought then might be that Bitcoin's a little bit less. So let's do 160. Right? What I'm saying there is OnyxCoin and Bitcoin likely don't top at the same time. So if Bitcoin tops before or after OnyxCoin, on its way to 180K, it might be at a lower price. Does that make sense? I don't know how else to word that. So 160K. That gives us a 30-cent price, which 30 cents we can also make sense out of, right? 30 cents is right here in the middle of our zone. It's right there in the middle of the 1886200 level. That's why it's a zone in itself. Perfect. Beautiful. If we take this and we multiply it now by, you know, let's say I'm off even. Let's say I'm even wrong and we go to like 140K instead. You know, it's 26 cents. That's at the base of this range here, right? Because again, we're doing rough math here. There's a bunch of ways where things could be off a little bit, where XCN BTC does go to this level, where Bitcoin does go to 180K by the end of the year, but the timing's off to such a degree that maybe XCN tops off and Bitcoin's at 140K instead, and we're at a 26 cent price. So even at 140K, we can make sense out of a 26 cent price based on XCN BTC. We do this again, and now we use the big numbers. Now we have some fun. I like to hold back, save the big numbers for last. Let's say Bitcoin is at 200,000 by the end of the year. Let's say it's even above 200,000 by the end of the year and it pulls back to 200,000. That gives OnyxCoin a 37-cent price. So XCN, we're actually making sense. And I normally don't talk about this stuff. We've made sense out of higher targets than 32 cents before. And we've seen it a few times this cycle with various cryptos where they do wick above their 200 level. That's okay, it happens. It can happen. Sometimes you do. There are ways to make sense out of targets that are above 32 cents. There are, right? But we haven't really had much reason to talk about them because all those targets were above 180K. If we were above 180K, but now assuming that XCN versus BTC hits these levels likely when Bitcoin is at its end of year prices, I think it's fair game to kind of talk about. All I'm trying to say here is we've made sense at the very least, at the very bare bones minimum, using just XCN to BTC, comparing it to BTC, doing our math. We've made a hell of a lot of sense out of prices that are between 16 cents and 11.5 cents. Okay, made a hell of a lot of sense out of that area. We also made a hell of a lot of sense out of prices between 26 cents and even 40 cents. We didn't even go higher. We could have gone higher, like probably 40 cents, but something around, let's say like 35 cents to 26 cents, right? Around there. We made a lot of sense out of this area too. There's not a whole lot of sense in stopping anywhere else, right? We didn't get any of that. So by the end of this year, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, I think it's safe to assume that on the low end of things, by the end of the year, okay, it's the middle of October, we have November, December, 2.5 months left. By the end of this year, it's safe to assume on the low end of things, on the low end of the spectrum, this is like if OnyxCoin does bad. We're doing a 12x, okay? 12x to a 17x. If it does good, if it does what we've been looking for it to do this whole time, if it does some stuff that makes sense in various other ways, we'd see something on the lines of a 27x to maybe a 40x by the end of this year. Not by the end of the cycle, by the end of this year. Minimum, maximum, whatever, that's pretty good gains. That's pretty good gains. And I have to admit, down here, stopping here where we're not even seeing new all-time highs, it's a bit disappointing because we've been thinking about this target area the whole time. This area we talked about, we actually have talked about it at length on every single video of these that I've made. We've made sense out of these, trying to be super conservative. But the thing is, every time that we've talked about this zone, it has been from a point of like over conservativeness, overly being conservative. Now, with the recent mishap in the markets, it's not really overly conservative. It's actually, I think, very appropriate. I'm going to use the words appropriate to consider an 11.5 to a 16.5 cent price. I think it's very appropriate to consider that, which is kind of a bummer. But it's kind of not, it's a 12x to a 17x. That's not that bad. That's pretty good. That's pretty freaking good. What's crazy is the minimums, even with the recent mishap, are still going to largely outperform anything in the crypto markets. We didn't make sense out of anything less, right? In fact, anything below 9 cents or around 9 cents is laughable, right? It's absolutely laughable because XCN, one thing's for certain, when we break out, we are going to see higher highs, and at least at a bare minimum, we would be stopping somewhere around the top end of this range. And we use the minimum, we multiply that number by the current price of Bitcoin, which means that a 9 cent XCN is laughable. So when I tell you that a 12x is the minimum target, I'm not saying that for clickbait. I'm saying that because, we just did the homework. You know why. I've got nothing else for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Think about it now, man. Think about it right now. If you were staking OnyxCoin and you have 1 million tokens, you're probably making, I don't know what the math is on that, but per day, it'll tell you. I want to say that that's like 800 to 900 tokens a day, right? 900 OnyxCoins. Let's treat them like pennies because they are worth a penny. Imagine you got 900 pennies a day. That's $9 a day. Imagine that goes up to 11 cents. Now that's $99 a day, right? You're making $99 a day, roughly, if you have 1 million Onyx coins staked. Because once we get there, that's what it'll be worth. And that's at a minimum. That's at a minimum. Get your $99 a day if you have 1 million. If it's not 1 million, you have 500,000. Get your 44.5 dollars a day. If you have 250,000, get your $20 a day. You know what I mean? I think everybody can afford, and not financial advice, not a financial advisor. I don't know everybody's situation, but I think everybody could afford 250,000 Onyx coins if they want to make an investment, right? That's a good minimum starting point, right? If you don't have that, I'm not trying to belittle people. I try not to talk numbers because I don't want to discourage people. Whenever I say things like if 250,000 Onyx coins is hard for you to attain, don't worry about it. Whatever, do your thing. Get your 100,000, get your 10,000, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. However much you can afford, right? And start with you. Don't worry about other people. Don't worry about how much somebody else has. Worry about how much you have and make that grow. Okay? I don't like talking numbers because I don't want to discourage anybody, right? People get weird whenever you talk numbers, and I try not to do that. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you all for being here. I hope you had fun. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe. I am anticipating that OnyxCoin will rally here pretty soon. Bitcoin's coming down, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it'd move up, so maybe OnyxCoin moves down as well. But we are expecting a rally to happen. We didn't do any short-term analysis, but just looking at the 4-hour time frame here, the RSI does look weak. So do the stochastics and the MACD. Daily time frame. Let's see here. Should I save? Should I have this all saved? What do you guys think? Should I have this saved? Maybe I'll leave this saved, and I'll see if anybody wants. I'll read the comments. I'll ask you guys if you think that we should save these lines. I can save this as like a chart and put it on something else. But I do think we're at a low point. I think it's very clear that we're at a low point. Buy while you can, stake while you can. The APR will go down, right? It was 34.5% at first, and now it's 33%. It goes down every day. So that high staking APR will go down as time goes on. Just understand that. Anyways, the more people that stake, the more that APR will go down. The less people that stake, the less it'll go down, and it might even stay the same. I should really be on here telling everybody to stop staking, get out of it. It's dangerous. Don't do it. And then I'd get more. But we can all get a slice of that pie. The pie gets smaller as more people stake. But I think that it's a trustworthy protocol. I think I like Chain. I like OnyxCoin. I think that they're good. Anyways, I'm done talking, guys. Hit the like button. Take care. Bye bye.